Good afternoon. We begin with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to Washington. After arriving in the U.S., Netanyahu received security briefings from senior American officials ahead of his meeting with President Donald Trump. He is also scheduled to meet with Secretary of State Marco Rubio before heading to the White House. Israeli officials say Netanyahu will push for any potential U.S.-Iran agreement to include strict limits not only on Iran's nuclear program, but also on its ballistic missile capabilities. He is expected to present updated intelligence suggesting Iran is rebuilding its missile stockpile and could accumulate thousands of missiles within a short period if left unchecked. Israeli leadership maintains that even if Washington reaches a deal with Tehran, Israel must preserve the right to act independently to protect its security. President Trump has stated that he believes Iran is interested in reaching an agreement regarding its nuclear and missile programs. However, he warned that failure to secure a deal could result in severe consequences. In recent remarks, Trump emphasized that negotiations appear more promising than in the past, but made clear that any agreement must eliminate the threat of nuclear weapons and missile expansion. He also noted increased U.S. naval deployments in the region. Meanwhile, satellite imagery shows U.S. forces repositioning Patriot missile defense systems at a major base in Qatar, signaling heightened readiness. Additional American aircraft and assets have reportedly been deployed across the Middle East, although the Pentagon has not publicly detailed the movements. At the same time, new satellite images indicate Iran may be preparing for potential strikes by sealing entrances to underground nuclear facilities and limiting visible activity around sensitive sites. Analysts say such measures could complicate any future military operation. Turning to Gaza, the Israeli military confirmed strikes targeting militant infrastructure following attacks on Israeli troops near Rafah. The area remains volatile, despite ongoing diplomatic discussions elsewhere. In a related development, Israel's president is visiting Australia, meeting national leaders and members of the Jewish community following a deadly anti-Semitic attack last year. The visit has been described as both diplomatic and deeply personal, emphasizing solidarity and support. Security analysts warn that Iran's missile program poses a significant threat. Experts argue that ballistic missiles are a critical component of military capability, particularly when paired with nuclear potential. Reports suggest Iran maintains a substantial missile inventory and may be expanding production despite international pressure. There is growing debate over whether negotiations can realistically limit both nuclear development and missile expansion. Some analysts believe Iran may show limited flexibility, but is unlikely to accept conditions that significantly weaken the regime's strategic position. Others argue that if talks collapse, the United States already has sufficient military assets in place to respond quickly. European nations continue to favor diplomacy, though recent steps, including additional sanctions and security preparations, indicate rising concern over Iran's actions. Observers note that the broader regional picture connects developments in Iran with instability in Gaza, as militant groups in the region are believed to receive Iranian support. In Gaza, despite discussions of ceasefire frameworks, sporadic attacks continue. Israeli officials say militant groups remain active, operating from tunnel networks and maintaining supplies accumulated during the conflict. While large-scale operations have slowed, tensions remain high, and the situation could escalate if negotiations stall. As diplomatic efforts continue, the coming days may prove critical in determining whether the path forward leads to a negotiated settlement or increased military confrontation. That concludes this update. Stay tuned for further developments. As discussions move forward in Washington, timing appears to be a crucial factor. Analysts suggest there may be a limited window for diplomatic progress before decisions shift from negotiation to direct action, While talks remain ongoing, both sides are carefully weighing strategic options. Security experts note that any comprehensive agreement would need to address three major components: uranium enrichment, weaponization capability, and long-range missile systems. Without limits on all three areas, critics argue that any deal could leave significant security gaps. Some observers believe the United States is applying a strategy of calculated pressure, combining military positioning, economic sanctions, and diplomatic engagement, in order to maximize leverage at the negotiating table. This approach aims to push Tehran toward concessions without immediately escalating into open conflict. At the same time, internal pressures within Iran are also being closely monitored. Economic strain, currency instability, and public dissatisfaction have created additional challenges for the Iranian leadership. Whether those domestic factors influence Tehran's negotiating posture remains uncertain. Regional dynamics also play a key role. Gulf states, European governments, and neighboring countries are watching developments closely, aware that any escalation could impact global energy markets, trade routes, and overall regional stability. In Gaza, the security situation remains fragile. Although large-scale fighting has slowed compared to earlier phases of the conflict, targeted strikes and isolated clashes continue. Military officials state that militant infrastructure is still active in certain areas, particularly within underground tunnel systems that complicate operations. Diplomatic initiatives aimed at long-term stabilization face obstacles, including questions about disarmament, governance, and enforcement mechanisms. Without clear implementation structures, ceasefire arrangements risk remaining temporary. In summary, the region stands at a pivotal moment. Diplomatic channels remain open, but military preparedness on multiple sides signals that contingency plans are firmly in place. The outcome of high-level meetings in Washington could shape the strategic landscape of the Middle East for years to come. We will continue to monitor these developments and provide updates as the situation evolves. European nations continue to favor diplomacy, though recent steps, including additional sanctions and security preparations, indicate rising concern over Iran's actions. Observers note that the broader regional picture connects developments in Iran with instability in Gaza, as militant groups in the region are believed to receive Iranian support. In Gaza, despite discussions of ceasefire frameworks, sporadic attacks continue. Israeli officials say militant groups remain active, operating from tunnel networks and maintaining supplies accumulated during the conflict. While large-scale operations have slowed, tensions remain high, and the situation could escalate if negotiations stall. As diplomatic efforts continue, the coming days may prove critical in determining whether the path forward leads to a negotiated settlement or increased military confrontation. That concludes this update. Stay tuned for further developments.